You're doing that thing again. I don't have any space unless I put it in some virtual situation that you've already allowed somebody else to claim. So as soon as I upload it, it's like they take it immediately and do all kinds of stuff with it. Here's the problem: these little composites that they've tried to program, they can't work the tariff. This is the problem. They just wave it off onto children. You ever worked a Russian steel tariff? Have you ever worked a Russian steel tariff? They don't do that here. The women in steel, the women in NDT, even the men in steel and the men in NDT in this country, they don't work the tariffs. They wave them off onto children. They're doing it right fucking now. That's exactly what your broker did, and it's exactly what was set up when that other broker used some proxies, including ones that I had a personal relationship with. So it's kind of like I don't really appreciate your priorities in the situation. See, if somebody comes to me and they're yelling and screaming and they're angry about something righteous in terms of bringing that anger about, it makes me affirmed that there are people capable of thinking who don't allow their emotions to be merely focused on licentious acquisition of vice that's just going to prove a liability. I don't like blackmail, it's too costly. And I don't like people that can't pay for their own way. And nobody in this country that thinks they're entitled to various things from other country, including if they have family from that country, pays their own way. They don't pay their own taxes, and they sure as hell don't pay their own tariffs. What they do is they steal the specs and they try to create their own cheaper local version. And if you can't get an American, actual born an American girl to do the job, then you import a girl from another country that you've allowed to be downgraded. And that's what they've been doing. Now, at some point, we haven't talked about how Citigroup was allowed to get busted for a token bust, presumably connected to money laundering, and all of those accounts were allowed to be flipped after a certain period of time. I had a personal relationship because when they started a specific paradigm in 1995, I didn't agree for purely sensible political reasons, and I had support. So they chastised me, and 10 years later, they tried to make me co director of some actual official specific organization working with people that actually identified themselves as prostitutes and sex workers. You know, in some sectors, this is legitimate. Talking about public health, talking about nonprofits, talking about leadership development, but I was more interested in the organized crime element. I wanted to know what happens if one of these girls is threatened with a phone call that says they're going to rape her sister who's still there if she doesn't come back and turn tricks. Nobody to this day has been able to adequately answer that question, and what I've learned is that the pimps wanting you to turn tricks are by and large in government. They just have a different way of doing it. It's like the tariffs. They'll just wave it off onto someone else. You never see them collect the goods. I find it most distasteful. Now, that same bank had those accounts that were seized around money laundering and then swapped them out to some stolen chase account so somebody could work some fantasy scenarios with different racial characteristics, is importing people from south of the US Mexico border in order to rework their accounts, and it's been conspired with on every level. Is that really what you want instead? You're not going to get the equivalent of Russian steel. You're not going to get that. Are you willing to accept what they're going to give you instead? I'm just saying, it's a very simple matter. You know, it goes all the way back to when I was in high school. If you can't pay the tariff and you can't pay the tax yourself, then you shouldn't be able to avail yourself of the benefits. I've been paying other people's taxes for a very long time. I know what they think they're entitled to and what they won't associate themselves with officially. The reflection of the representation is that severe. They're that cowardly. I didn't want to pay these taxes because I didn't want the things they did, but I paid them. I'd like Russian steel, but I'm not going to let somebody else take it and then try to sell it to me at a discount after they beat it and slander it and then try to swap it out and tell me it's actually somebody else's. I've paid the tariffs. I know what it really is. And it's very different than American steel. And I believe right now, nobody's making American steel. They haven't made American steel in a very long time. That executive order is an act of securities fraud. Don't get caught.